Hey guys, so it is time. I need to change my rear differential fluid. My manual calls for about every 40,000 miles if I'm using it for heavy use, which I am. I'm towing my heavy fifth wheel around. So instead of just checking it like most people might be able to if you're not using it for heavy usage, that means then I just have to change it instead of just checking. The tools that I'll be using are my drip pan, and never forget to take out the plug if you've got one of these it drains into. Otherwise it'll all overflow. And then I have my torque wrench for 25 foot-pounds, which is the specs on the differential cover. I've got a half-inch drive, which will take the bolts out. This is RTV silicone. This is in case the gasket that yours comes with needs to be replaced. You can use this, or you can get another gasket, or if it's good enough, I'm hoping that mine's going to be fine because it's the original one. Paper towels, brake clean. That is going to clean out the inside of your cover and the mating surface on the open differential. And then the fluid to fill it back up. Mine is 75/90. It is okay if yours says, if you don't have limited slip, but it says limited slip, that should be okay to use. This is the rear differential. What it does is it takes power from the main drivetrain to the back of the vehicle and then transfers that to the back wheels. So there's a bunch of fluid in here that's used very much, and it needs to be changed to keep it maintained. This is the fill hole where you can fill up fluid. The most important thing to do before you ever start this is to make sure you can get this off. If you cannot open this and you end up taking this off, you can't ever use this again because you won't be able to get fluid back in. So you'd have to get a whole new cover. So we'll make sure we can take this off. So we'll take the drain plug out. And there's a little magnet back here, so you want to get that clean before you put it back in. You can test with a finger to see where the level is. And I can see it's actually right about at the fill line, so that's a good thing. Since I've been able to get this off, I'm going to put it back in just to keep it clean. And now I can begin to take the rest of the bolts off, leaving this top one on. Well, guys, I will tell you something. The honest truth, I could not get my drain plug out. I had to call somebody to come over. Thankfully, I made friends with people at the last park in this same town, and her husband came over and helped me break those because I just couldn't do it. He did it in seconds, and I was like, oh, I don't know if it'll ever come out. I mean, yeah, if you might not have the most amount of muscles like myself, having somebody on standby that can just break those bolts for you is definitely worthwhile. Anyway, now I can cover this, and this is the mating surface. I got to clean that and clean the gasket and the case. So now I can just wipe this down, get most of the fluid out of there. Check that out. Once I've got it pretty darn well clean with the paper towels, I can use the brake cleaner. That'll get so much more off. Also use that on the gasket. So if you're going to use the original manufacturer's gasket, you want to just inspect it to make sure that there's no holes or anything like that, and it looks like it's in good shape. A lot of people like to reuse these ones because, well, one, you don't have to buy another one. Two, they're this rigid material, so they don't let, they kind of keep anything from getting too tight. And If you want to not use this, you can either buy a new one, or for much less money you can buy the RTV gasket maker, something like this. There's a bunch of different kinds, and you would just put the bead on the inside of the bolt holes. If you use that, the next time you change out the lubricant, you're going to need to scrape it off. And if you ever have to scrape anything, you never want to use metal. Always use plastic, because these are kind of a soft material. I think it's an aluminum composite. So you can actually make a little scratch. And if you make even a teeny tiny scratch, that's going to be a path for a potential leak. So you don't want to use any metal, and that goes for the same as the mating surface on, or the mating surface on the differential itself. So I will be reusing this. If you do use the gasket maker, you got to follow the instructions. Some of them it'll tell you to put it on and let it sit for about an hour with minimum pressure. So after an hour, some even maybe like 24 hours, then you can torque it down to spec. So if you use the gasket maker, the silicone sealant, instead of this, then you need to make sure you follow the instructions. Also make sure that you got one that allows it to be used with the rear differential. Some of them have a different material, chemical in it, and it will actually, the fluid for the rear differential can erode that. So you want to make sure that the RTV that you get allows it to be used with rear differentials. So I've got a paper towel here with a brake cleaner on it. And since I have never had anything but the original gasket, I don't have anything to scrape off, but there is stuff that I can clean. If you have to scrape anything up here at the top, you're going to want to put like some tin foil or like a plastic bag over this, so that when you scrape, nothing is falling in here. In fact, you can see a teeny tiny little speck I've already let fall in there. One thing that I actually really enjoy about doing my own maintenance, aside from being totally empowered and saving a bunch of money, is it's possible, if I do it right, that I'm actually doing a better job than if you go to a mechanic. Not all the time, but let me tell you this, I did a video on how to change your transmission fluid, which you can find. Be sure to check that link in the description of this video. I had probably about 3 or 4 mechanics go on to that and say that, you know, they work for this mechanic or whatever, and I did a better job in the video than they do at their mechanic service. So, you know, those guys are just like churning them out, and me, I'm like taking my delicate time to get all the little pieces of anything out, and you know, kind of enjoying the process. So that's another reason, that's a good reason to do your own maintenance. Now that I got this surface clean and my gasket clean, got a little bit of dust that blew on there, I'm ready to put this back together. By the way, you don't want to use a gasket along with the RTV gasket maker. You just use one or the other. I can put this back on now that it's drained. I'm just going to start by putting the top one on and the bottom one just loosely. I want to make sure my gasket gets really well lined up. Just enough resistance to get them in there. Then I can put the others in, hand tightening them, and I will torque them down to spec in a star pattern once they're all just hand tightened. The thing is, you don't want to get like one part farther in than another side so that these threads, you know, are skipped, like one thread skipped over here because it's too tight over there. normally you're going to have a star pattern, and I couldn't find one online for the 14 bolts. So it's just like a star. So you go like one here, up here, and then you kind of go in like a little bit of a kind of making stars, right? I've got my torque wrench here. The way to use a torque wrench is you want to know how many foot-pounds you want. So I want 25 foot-pounds, and you can see that it has a little line that goes down into the center, and then so you unlock this bottom to loosen it, and then after that you can turn this to go up or down. See how it's going down right now? So if you want it to be at like right here, you could say we're almost at 15, right? So there's 15 with a 0. If you want it to be 16, you'd do the 15 and then this 1. 17 would be the 15 and then the 2. So I need it to be 25. So I'm going to go up to 25 right there. To know that you've gotten to 25, you'll feel a little click and here a click, and you can do it one more time to double check. Since I've got a little bit of fluid and oil here, I want to clean that off just in case I get a leak. It'll help me know, because then this will be cleaner and I'll be able to see any new grease spills. I can now take the drain plug off. I can actually do that manually and fill it up. So you can either get these quart-size bottles that have a pointy top, or which are easier to fill, or you can get gallon-sized ones and then use a pump to pump it into the differential. It's so cold out here, my fingers are getting stiff. So I put 3 quarts in mine. My fill level is right here. So the way to check the fluid on these is to put your finger in and then kind of dip down and see if you are hitting fluid, and I am. It's time to put the drain cap back on, or the fill cap. This also needs to be torqued down. And mine says 25 foot-pounds, so I've already got it set. Whoops. I'll take the get off of that. Click, click. Click, click. So we should be good to go. I'm going to keep an eye to make sure that there's no leaks coming out of here. And I'm good to go for the next 40,000 miles.